Good evening. Welcome to a revision lesson with Wigan and Leigh College. Today is the 9th of May 2018 and we will be looking at angles on parallel lines. Okay, I would recommend you do take notes as we go along, and it will support you to complete the questions that will be provided at the end, and we will go through the answers. And it's good to make notes for revision as well, because it is highly likely that it may come up on the exam. Okay, before we do get started on angles on parallel lines, let's just have a look at some basic information to do with this. Now, when we say parallel lines, it's two lines which run parallel to each other, or you'd say like train tracks where they go side by side and they never meet, so they're moving in the same direction side by side but they don't cross or meet. These two, obviously not drawn with a ruler or measured, but they are parallel lines. Now, when we're looking at angles, we will usually have a line cut through the middle, or maybe more than one line. This line is usually referred to as a transversal line, and it's just a line which cuts through parallel lines. So it's just called transversal, and this line and this line are your parallel lines. Okay, so if you weren't sure about what parallel lines are, do make a note of that. Okay, now before we do start visiting more on the angles, what I do want to do is recap on a few main points. So angles on a straight line, what do they add up to? Well, angles on a straight line will always add up to 180 degrees. Okay, and that's really important. Angles on a point, well, on a point it's always on a circle, so that could be the point. Get it in there. That could be the point. All those angles will always add up to 360 degrees. Sometimes you can always check that you're working just to make sure if it makes sense. Okay, if you just note that down. Okay, now moving on, today we are going to be looking at alternate angles, corresponding angles, vertically opposite angles and co-interior angles. I will go through these each one at a time. So the first thing I'd like you to make a note of, what we will be looking at, is alternate angles. Okay, now with alternate angles, let's just draw an image to have a look at what they'll be like. Okay, so if we were to put angles on here, the alternate angles would be the angles here and here. So they would both have exact the same value. They'd both, I'm just going to call them x for now, but just to say that they would both be exactly the same, because the transversal, or the line that cuts through both at the same angle. Okay, now sometimes the alternate angle, it can also be here and here. So they would both be the same as well. Now I just want to highlight something, and it is a way that I do actually remember this. So if you look at the angles, it's the angles within the turn of a Z. So they're alternate angles, but they're the angles which, if you were to imagine a Z shape, it'd be within the turns of the Z. And here we can actually just have a look and see a backwards Z. And the angles which are the same are on the turns of the Z here. Obviously in the exam you might get a question which asks you to identify the angles. You might be given one of the measurements and you'd need to work out the other. And if we had a value for x, you would know that the alternate angles would have the same value. It's important that you remember the name alternate and not Z angles, as to get your marks in the exam you do need to give the mathematical terms for that. So let's just have a look at an example of an alternate angle. So I'm just going to... Okay, so say we knew this angle was supposed to be a 63 degrees, and this was called angle X. Well, because this looks, we can see that these are alternate angles. It's on the turns of the Z. They would both hold the same value, so X would be 63 degrees. Now, if you were told to explain your reasoning in the exam, you would need to state that angle X is 63 degrees because they are alternate angles. Okay, so that is alternate angles. Now we're just going to take a look at corresponding angles. And if you'd like to make a note of this as well. Oh, that's spelled a bit, supposed to be a D. So corresponding angles. Okay, so we've got our parallel lines. Again, we've got a transversal that will cut through, and the corresponding angles are the angles there. Now let's have a look at another. It could also be these as well. When I'm remembering corresponding angles, I think of them as an F shape. They can be referred to as an F shape. So if you just have a look, let's have a look here. It kind of looks like an F, and again, it's just underneath the lines of the F. So with this one, it's a backwards F, and the angles which are the same, or when they're corresponding, they're sometimes referred to as F angles. Again, just to make a point that you wouldn't refer to them as F angles in the exam, you would need to say that they are corresponding angles, which is why they're the same. So the angles here would again have the same value. Now with F angles, they don't need to be, they can be upside down, so they can be just an F. They could be flipped upside down, they could have a mirror reflection. As long as you can find that F, you're okay with that. Let's just have a look again. Okay, so in this case, this could be referred to as F angles as well, or sorry, corresponding angles. So let's just have a look why. There's the corresponding angles, so they would be the same. So whatever value one was, the other one would be the same as well. Okay. Let's have a look at another example of corresponding angles. Okay, so if we were to say this was 48 degrees, and in the exam you were asked to find the value of angle X and state your reason. Well, they're under the lines of the F, so X would also be 48 degrees, and your reason would be that it is a corresponding, they are corresponding angles. Okay, so corresponding angles are sometimes remembered by just thinking of an F shape. Okay, now just having a look at co-interior angles. Okay, co-interior angles. angles. So this is sometimes looked at as a C shape. So angles that are within the C shape, they will be co-interior angles, and they always add up to 180 degrees. So if this was X and this was 52, sorry, I'm just not going to call that 52. Call it 83 degrees. So if this is 83 degrees and that is X, and we want the value of X, how you would do your calculation is you'd subtract that from 180. So it would be 180 minus 83. Just leave us with 97 degrees. So your answer would be X equals 97 degrees. Okay, and the 97 plus the 83 gives you your 180 degrees. So make a note to yourself, or make a note on paper in your revision notes, that co-interior angles always add up to 180 degrees. The co-interior angles could be these angles as well. And just don't forget either, like we just mentioned, the angles over here, put these in yellow, because that's a straight line, they would also add up to 180 degrees. So let's just have a look at an example again. So that was 78 degrees. What would X be? Well, as we know that we can see that this is C angles, we know that it should add up to 180 degrees. So it would be 180 minus your 78 to work out what's left, which would leave you with 102 degrees. So you'd say X is 102 degrees, and if you had to give a reason, you'd say it's because they are co-interior angles. And let's just take a quick look at vertically opposite angles. When we look at when you look at vertically opposite angles, I'll give you an example of that now. So it's just angles that are opposite each other. So if this was 112 degrees, this angle would also be 112 degrees. If this, obviously if that's 112, then to get this yellow area that I've just highlighted, we would need to take it away from 180 because they are co-interior angles. So 180 minus 112 is leaving us with 68 degrees, which would mean that this side over here is vertically opposite, so that would also be 68 degrees. So if you just want to make a note of that, so this is when they are vertically opposite. And just to show you also, the other missing angles would be 112 degrees, and we can see that because we can see it here, they're alternate angles, so they're under the folds of the Z. So you can always use one angle to work out another angle. Okay, now what I would like to do is give you some questions to have a go at yourself. If you'd just like to have a go at them, I will give you 5 minutes and then we can go through the answers. So questions 1 to 6. do want you to write down a reason as well to state why you've selected the measurement you have. Okay, so let's just go through the other answers now, just to make sure you're on the right track. So for question 1, angle A is 40 degrees, and your answer would be that it's alternate angles. I'm just going to highlight where they're alternate. So as you can see here, it's like a Z, so that would be the alternate angles. Question 2, B would be 50 degrees, and that is because they are corresponding angles, and you can see the upside down F over here. Question 3, first of all we can work out, well, any of them really, with D, because it's on a straight line, we know that 45 degrees plus D will give us 180 degrees, so 180 minus 45 will leave us with 135 degrees, and with C, because it is alternate angles to the 45 degrees, we know C would be 45 degrees, or you may have written down that it's co-interior angles with D and C, and that's fine as well once you've worked out D to explain why C would be 45 degrees. With question 4, have a look at this. So E would be 55 degrees because it is alternate angles, and F would also be 55 degrees because the angles are vertically opposite each other. So you can see that angle F and angle E are actually opposite each other. Question 5, G would be 110 degrees, and it would be because it's vertically opposite the 110 degrees. H would be 70 degrees because angles on a straight line add up to 180 degrees, and 180 minus 110 would give you 70 degrees. Which is here. And with F, with F, we would call it the same as G, which is 110 degrees, and because they are corresponding angles, and you can see the F just under the F here. Now, number 6, it does seem that there's much more to work out, but if you do break question down and take it a step at a time, it won't be as difficult as it will seem. Now, let's just start off with what we have. We know that one of the angles is 115 degrees. We also know that one of the angles is 125 degrees. Now, what you could work out, first of all, is this angle here. It is on a straight line. They've not asked us to find it out, but we might need it to work out what we need. So angles on a straight line add up to 180 degrees. 180 minus 125 leaves us with 55 degrees here. Sorry, that's meant to be a 5. So 55 degrees. So K is an alternate angle to this. So that would also be 55 degrees. Let's show you the little Z here. These are alternate angles. So K is 55 degrees. Angle M is vertically opposite K. So that would be 55 degrees as well. And angle I is corresponding angle to the first 115 degrees. And that will be 115 degrees. Okay, if you just want to mark your work, then correct it. And make sure, just check that you know where you've gone wrong. Okay, and just before we do finish off, there is a question that you could complete for homework. I want you to just take a screenshot of this, or take a picture of it, and have a go at completing this. So we're going to do this one for homework. And I want you to think about the reasons. So today we have discussed 4 different types of angles, and it is important that you do know the angles and the reasons behind why we would label which angle what. So we've got alternate angles, corresponding angles, vertically opposite angles, and co-interior angles. I'll actually just write them down for you here again. So it is, number 1, it's alternate angles. Then we've got corresponding angles, which are vertically opposite angles. And then your co-interior angles. Okay, I'll actually just add here as well what we actually call them. So your alternate angles, if you want to think of them as the Z angles to help you identify them, the corresponding angles were F, and they could also be upside down or back to front as well. When something is vertically opposite, it's just when it's directly opposite, and co-interior angles were your C angles. So maybe just take a screenshot of this page, or just write it down again. And I just want to say thank you for watching. We do have another online lesson tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Do tune in. It is an extra about a revision that you will get. and do advertise it to your friends as well. We look forward to sharing information with you tomorrow. Thank you.